My name is Isabel Hudings. I'm the Scientific Program Director at ILSI Europe, and we are supporting fully this cost action on acrylamide reduction. ILSI Europe, for those who don't know, it is a non-profit organization that fosters collaboration between academia, industry, and the public sector, and to foster these collaborations and then advance research in the domain of food safety, nutrition, and sustainability, and making sure that we have a great impact and disseminating our results. In this webinar, the agenda is that we will introduce you and get you very excited about this cost action. But before going into the project, the action itself, we have joining us Mafalda Quintas, who is a project officer at COST, and it's our project officer of acrylamide, the project, who will be explaining what COST is about. So Mafalda, I don't have more further ado. I will give you immediately the floor to explain what COST is about, and then will be followed up by Nigel.
Okay, thank you, Isabel. I will try to be very, very short and you see my slides?
Excellent, we see you and hear you perfectly.
Okay, perfect. So thank you for joining us. As Isabel kindly noted, my name is Mafalda Quintas. I'm the science officer at COST, and I will be responsible for this new cost action from the COST side, and that will soon kick off. Just to give you a very quick overview of what is a cost action is not a research project, it's an open network. And what COST does is that it provides the funding for the networking activities and provides all the support for the network to operate and to grow and to be open as much as possible. So the network is based on what we call the Memorandum of Understanding. I think Nigel will later tell you exactly where are all the documents that you need to find. It's funded for 4 years. We need to have at least 7 countries in a proposal for a cost action to be able to exist, but this action is already much bigger than this. We support the research coordination and capacity building objectives. Again, we do not fund the research, but the research coordination. And the average budget of a cost action is about 600,000 euros through the lifetime of the action. We also, I think it's also important that you understand what can be funded by a cost action. A cost action can fund the organization of events, meetings and training schools. Also, the mobility of researchers and innovators. Why do we use researchers and innovators? Because we're not only talking about academia, but a very wide breadth of stakeholders that want to be involved, that we call the short-term scientific missions and the virtual mobility. We also provide funding for presentations at external conferences not organized by the action, like the dissemination conferences and special conferences to support young researchers in inclusiveness, in the widening countries of the Horizon Europe program that in COST are called Inclusiveness Target Countries, ITCs. But the action also funds the support of these networking activities, either via other expenses needed for the maintaining of the network, or by providing funding for dissemination and communication products produced by the cost action. Just to give you a little bit of an idea on why to engage actively in a cost action and why I think it's very important, this invitation that Nigel and ILSI are making today for the wider community to be part of this cost action, is because we've been around for many, many years. So we've been doing some studies about how a cost action, what is the impact of these open networks and what a cost action can bring. And our studies show that for academia, there is a clear, when you actively engage in a cost action, there's a clear impact on the output and the career progression of the participants in cost actions. For example, we see a 55% increase in co-publications, on average a 30% success rate of proposals to the other parts of the EU framework programs. And we know that the participants, 88% of the participants that actively participate actually report career progression due to the participation in a cost action. So, but this is not a network only for academics. This is a network that aims to engage as much people as possible. And what we've seen is that small and medium enterprises, they participate in cost actions, and what they report is that they use and they can leverage the cost action to find new partners and early access to new products and ideas. But also the large companies, they are very much involved and very much also welcome in the cost actions, because they tend, from the studies that we made, we know that they tend to use the cost action as a way to monitor new scientific developments and sometimes also influence the research agenda. If you are a policymaker, then most of the cases we see policymakers using these open networks as a way to access a pool of knowledge where they can draw scientific advice from. So there is a lot of benefit for engaging in a cost action. And I think that the following question that comes is, who can participate in a cost action? So it's a very open and simple answer. The answer is any individual with an affiliation in a legal entity can be part of the cost action, and this legal entity can be anywhere in the world, can be placed anywhere in the world. So we are talking any country, no limits for the participation. How can people join? They can actually become an active working group member, meaning that they will formally join the action, they will contribute to the action objectives, they will be on a long-term basis providing contribution, but also receiving some benefit, as already explained before. And here the application is made via eCost. I think Nigel will also explain a little bit better how can you do that. But you can also become what we call an ad hoc contributor, someone that is not engaged very actively in the cost action, but still somehow follows the development, participates on an ad hoc basis for a meeting, for a training school, organizes or benefits from a grant for a short-term scientific mission, and whatever you may wish for. I think that I stayed, I hope I didn't overcome my time. So thank you for this time, Isabel. I will stay here for whatever questions the participants may have. And yes, please do share these slides with the participants.
We will most certainly do. Thank you, Mafalda, for explaining this in a very relevant way and showing the added value of really signing up and contributing to these working groups. So indeed, Nigel will explain it more. For those who know it already, in the chat, you already have the link. If you say like, yes, immediately, I want to sign up. And indeed, these slides will be shared. Also, you notice that this webinar is recorded and the recordings will be made available. I will repeat it afterwards. But with this, I give the floor to Nigel. And Professor Nigel Halford is actually the lead proposal of this successful action application. And Professor Halford is a principal research scientist at Ramhamshire Research, one of the UK's primary agricultural research centre. And his research programs concern genetics of metabolic regulation in crop plants. So how plant metabolism is affected by environmental stress and crop management, and how it can be manipulated to improve crop yield, quality, and food safety. And the acrylamide issue has been a major strategic application of his work already since 2004. So he has gained lots of expertise in this field, hence why he is the leader of this cost action. Nigel, I give the floor to you.
Thanks very much for that introduction, Isabel. So yes, our cost action is on reducing acrylamide exposure of consumers We're focusing on cereals, and we want an approach that covers the whole of the supply chain, targeting asparagine concentration. So I'm going to give you hopefully information about the cost action and finish up with how to join a working group, and that's how you register for the network. So I'll give you an intro on the topic, how we are structuring the cost action, and then how to sign up. So what is acrylamide? It's a processing contaminant. It naturally forms, i.e. there's no additive involved in fried, baked, roasted, toasted foods, i.e. foods that are cooked at high temperatures. And it's become quite a big problem for the food industry. As I said, not an additive, but found in a wide range of food products, from bread, particularly when toasted. It doesn't have to be toasted. Biscuits, breakfast cereals, also potato products and coffee. And it occurs in food cooked at home, in restaurants, and food produced commercially. So it forms through a chemical reaction called the Maillard reaction. No enzymes involved in that. It's just heat. And basically the amino groups, principally those of free non-protein amino acids and reducing sugars, so glucose, fructose, and maltose. And of course, the compounds that determine the color, flavor, aroma, the things we associate with fried, baked, roasted, and toasted foods, also the texture, are formed by similar chemical pathways. And of course, that makes it more difficult, because anything you do to mitigate acrylamide may well also affect the quality of your product. So just summing that up, sugars such as fructose, glucose, you can add maltose to that. The free amino acid asparagine, then toasting, baking, frying, roasting will give you acrylamide. And it's pH dependent, it's water content dependent, and it's high temperature dependent. And we know that in cereal products, it's free asparagine concentration that appears to be the determining factor for how much acrylamide that forms. This just shows data from wheat and rye grain. We assume that other cereals are the same. And in fact, a consideration of asparagine concentration is in cereal raw materials is now part of the code of practice for cereal manufacturers. So it's reducing the potential health risks. In 2015, we had a report from the CONTAM committee of EFSA, and that probably remains the most comprehensive risk assessment of dietary acrylamide, how much risk it represents. And right in the summary of that report, they stated that acrylamide potentially increases the risk of developing cancer for consumers in all age groups. So that was something of a seminal moment, and it led the European Commission to bring forward new, what they call risk management measures for acrylamide. So acrylamide formation depends on agronomy, recipe, processing, and finishing of the final product. And all those are covered in the regulation. And to sum that regulation up, so this is a regulation that came out of that as a result of the CONTAM report. It establishes effective EU-wide mandatory rules on which food business operators must work. So quite a burden for the food industry as it is, because it means that they are required to minimize the levels of acrylamide in their products to as low as reasonably achievable. There's a whole set of mitigation methods, effectively codes of practice set out within the regulation that they have to follow. And they have to monitor acrylamide levels in their product and investigate and improve their performance using benchmark levels, i.e. levels of acrylamide in each product that are set out in the regulation. So, you've got benchmark levels, continuous monitoring, data collection and investigation. So quite a big issue for food businesses. And also within that regulation, there is an explicit threat to set out maximum levels for acrylamide. So benchmark levels are not maximum levels. They are performance indicator. Maximum levels would be levels over which it will be illegal to sell a product. So that would ramp things up further for the food industry. So of course there are ongoing discussions about the need, whether we need those limits and whether and what they should be set at. But it's important to say that that is on the table and could happen within Europe, the EU. So the cost action, that's why we think we need a cost action on this topic. And our main aims and objectives. So Mafalda's already told you what cost is about. It's not about funding research, it's about funding networking. And we would hope that applications for more funding will come out of the interactions that occur within the network. And we want to involve everybody from plant breeders, farming community, traders, processors, toxicologists, academic researchers from relevant disciplines, and perhaps academic researchers who currently are not aware of the relevance of their topic to this issue. So pathogens, for example, is an obvious example. We know that pathogen infection increases free asparagine content considerably in wheat grain. So do things like sulfur deficiency. So plant nutrition is directly relevant. So we want to bring those people into this topic and make them realize the relevance of what they're working on and get them talking to other people working on this topic. Regulators, consumer groups and health interest groups. We're interested in all those kinds of people signing up for the network. So our objectives: research coordination, knowledge exchange between these science disciplines. As I said, many different disciplines within even something like plant science are relevant to this topic. Stimulate research in supply chain management and coordinate research efforts in cereal farming practices. What is best practice for management of cereal crops to reduce asparagine concentration, and can we get that information out to farmers? Capacity building, and so interdisciplinary training, academic industrial collaboration. I think that's really, really important. And I think also crosstalk between food people and plant breeders and plant scientists, really, really important. And this is a great opportunity to make that happen. And supporting researchers from target countries to extend knowledge network. And then on the right there, you have the structures. So we have 5 working groups. The central one, which is essentially going to be the management committee and the core groups of the action, looking at exchange and integration of knowledge on asparagine and acrylamide. And then hold on. And then work groups 2 to 5. So work group 2, agronomy, plant breeding. Then work group 3, food chemistry and processing. 4, cereal supply chain economy. And 5, risk benefit analysis of Maillard reaction products and its mitigation. So going into those working groups in a bit more detail. So working group 1, essentially the management committee and core groups of the action. So executing his role, powers and duties as described in the cost rules. I can provide people with the cost rules, or you can download them from the cost site. And then exchanging knowledge, encouraging joint R&D planning between all the scientific disciplines involved in the topic. And then in agronomy and plant breeding, working group 2, defining research efforts, understanding the effects of farming practices, establishing best practice for agronomy, looking at conventional and organic farming, and disseminating that information to farmers. And then identifying pathways for the reduction of free asparagine levels in cereal cultivars through plant breeding. So we have several plant breeders already signed up to the action. We'd like them talking with plant scientists and also understanding what the food industry would like from them. And how can we get more information on asparagine levels in different cultivars. Workgroup 3, food chemistry and processing, better understanding of the different relationships between the profile of the raw materials, actually the composition of the raw materials and final product quality. That would include acrylamide, the sensory aspects, aroma, taste, texture, color, and what happens when we reduce acrylamide to all those other things, and also reducing acrylamide, but how we reduce it, and the effects that has on all those other really important quality aspects. And research on novel processing technologies to reduce acrylamide formation, and also rapid testing methods. And again, there are people online today who work on that. Really great potential for that aspect of the topic to have a big impact on acrylamide levels. Then workgroup 4, the supply chain economy, existing and alternative supply chain management models to guarantee low acrylamide formation in products, and how we look at things through the supply chain from farmers right through to processors. And also consumer preferences. Will consumers pay for products with lower acrylamide? What's the awareness of consumers? My feeling at the moment is this is not a consumer issue, it's a regulatory compliance issue, but that could change at any point. And consumer preference is really important, not only on acrylamide, but also the effects on the quality parameters that our interventions on acrylamide will make. And then workgroup 5, the risk benefit of maillard reaction products and its mitigation. So again, a dialogue and the parameters should be considered, the risk benefit analysis of maillard reaction products, impact and mitigation measures on the risk benefit balance. So those are our working groups. And in the next month or so, we'll be trying to establish sort of leadership of those working groups. So this is a project timeline. It's, as Mafalda said, it's a 4-year project. This was a draft that we submitted with the application. We may tweak it somewhat, maybe bring some things forward into the first year, for example, where we're looking at conferences, workshops. I would like all the working groups to be getting workshops going and training schools. And the project runs from October 2022. That's the first management committee meeting. It was on the 18th and 19th of October, and it will run through to November 2026. So we should be able to get going in November this year. So it's really quite imminent. So how do you go about it, joining a working group? Well, I've put links in the chat and instructions in the chat. So basically, you want to sign up for the COST program. You then need to look for action CA21149, because that will be available to you here. It's available in the chat. There's also a direct link to that action. Read the project description. There's a memorandum of understanding which you can download and read. Understand what the working groups are all about and which ones are of interest to you. And then essentially you register for the COST action by applying to one or more of the working groups. So there's instructions in the chat on how you do that. It's really quite simple. And then those applications will be looked at and ratified at the first management committee meeting next month. Okay. And we now have a Q&A, I think.
Indeed, we do. Thank you for this presentation of this exciting action to come. So we have a whole audience of 100 people who are interested in this topic, so I'm sure there will be questions. And while people are reflecting on our question, maybe one of the questions that we could come up with, will it be possible to suggest workshop topics?
Absolutely, we want as much participation as possible. So once the working groups are established, the leadership is established, I think they would all welcome suggestions for topics or workshops. So I would certainly want participants to have ways to influence how the cost action develops.
I don't see any question coming in yet, but another question one might have is, what will participation in a cost action cost me or my organization?
There's no cost. It's free to sign up, free to join.
Okay. We do have a question coming in from Tanya Kruftis. We have an organization, the last acrylamide conference in Discovery Park in the UK. Where should we aim to organize the next conference?
Good Lord, I haven't got that thought that far ahead yet. So this would be the first cost action conference. Rothenstedt will be available, but somewhere in Europe might be better. We will discuss that in the as soon as we get started, I would think. But there's no decision being made on that so far.
And maybe Mafalda, you can mention this as well. In a cost action, it's very important to be the geographical spread and to make sure that everybody can participate. So having a rotating conference in all locations around Europe might be a very good idea. I don't know, Mafalda, may you want to add maybe something to that?
Yes, of course. One of the main aspects of a successful network is a diverse network, because great ideas come out of diversity, and the diversity of people, of minds, of places is something very, very important for the success of a cost action.
Another question from Kristen. Would you, for instance, support comparative analysis of asparagine content of organic versus standard agricultural practice?
Absolutely, that's something comparison of organic versus standard is something we were asked to include in the cost action. So definitely yes.
There's another question for you, Professor Halford. How far is the discussion on the introducing maximum levels, and when is the legislation expected?
Well, I'm not involved in those, so I can only tell you from what anecdotal stuff. We know that the European Commission has already brought draft legislation on baby food products containing cereals, for example, to the European Parliament. They did that actually quite a while ago, at least 18 months ago, and they were sent back to make the levels lower, i.e. make it more stringent. I don't know what's happened to that since. Can I say the European Commission always takes longer than maybe you expect, but it gets to where it says it's going. If it says it's going to introduce maximum levels on areas not showing enough improvement, it will do that. But the timeline, I can't tell you.
Okay. There's 1 minute left, so who has a final question? No final questions. Victor, I see you talking.
I have final question, but this is sorry to be delay. I think the first my question or remark will be technical problem, because I could not load because the system show with access already number of participants, and this could be not for this meeting. I mean, I am currently in Brussels and I'm specifically take my time to be on this meeting, Nigel, with you, but I could not timely be on meeting because the system not allow me, because you have only limited number of participants. And I think in future we need to improve that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Because I also
yes, we have opened the license for a longer, much more period for 500 people. So I'm sorry for the technical hiccup.
I have sent a message to you, but this is clearly shows that we have only limited number of participants. I'm a bit surprised because also I'm responsible for a country, also for Germany, for this action. And I like to see what is by kickoff meeting, what will be the progress will be done. It's not only question, it's not question, my question or wish will be that in the end we have very successful cost action.
Yes. Yeah, well, sorry about that. It will be available to, the recording will be available, right? So you should be able to look at that if you were unable to log on earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we will send to all participants who are in the registered the recordings. We will also share it with all the management persons in the cost action, who will then send it out to their network as well. So it will be made available to everybody. I see there's another question. We can still go, but we have 1 minute over time, but happy to answer. Could you comment on plans to engage consumers on the topic of acrylamide engagement? Well, Lynn is reacting already, so there's a nice change.
I don't know what you mean by that. We need to be careful. I mean, we certainly, one of the working groups will be looking at that. And we are open to consumer groups participating in the action and in that working group. But yes, getting rational, risk-based information to consumers is always difficult.
Yeah, I guess that's all I meant, Nigel. I think it can be alarming when you talk about cancer-causing agents. So I guess to talk to consumers about it, if it's not already on their radar, it's better not being on their radar. But it's good to monitor consumer interest. But I think, yeah, it's just a watch out, isn't it? If it isn't something that consumers are worrying too much about, it's almost better staying that way, and we'll kind of follow the regulations. And I can perhaps add just a little bit on my understanding of where the regulations are. I think there was the proposal for the legal limits, and I think there's been a bit of a pushback at the moment to collect an impact analysis. So I think that's still ongoing at the moment, kind of looking at what the impact would be to try and push it, you know, kick the can down the road a little bit further. But I agree with you, Nigel, it will come eventually. But I think that's where the EU or the European Commission is at the moment, is collecting the impact analysis.
I see that people keep on in the chat. Our time is unfortunately up, but it seems like, Nigel, you have really set the scene and give taste for more. So as again, we will repeat, if you want to subscribe, the link is in the chat. We will also disseminate the link again together with the recordings and the slides that we will make available. And with this, Nigel, I don't know if you want to have some closing words.
Just thank everybody for participating and spending the time.
The same. Also, Mafalda, thank you very much for your time, for introducing cost action and networking opportunity, and hope to see you all subscribing via the link. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.